I'm pulling out of my driveway. We all know what that means. It's time for a drive to Origins. Okay. Well, as you can probably tell, this is going to be a slightly different episode of RFI compared to most of them because it's just me here, DM Matt. And I am actually driving in my car. I literally just pulled out of my driveway and I am driving to Origins, and I decided, hey, I'll go ahead and record a podcast while driving to Origins. Should be fun. Not to mention, I kind of totally yanked the idea from Magic developer Mark Rosewater. He actually does a podcast, Drive to Work, and where, like the podcast title says, he drives to work and records a podcast. And he talks in that podcast about, like, Magic the Gathering history, game design, theory, just all kinds of things. And it's actually really good if you have any interest in gaming, not just Magic the Gathering, because you could pick some of the episodes where he talks about game development, or just, like, he did a lot of writing for stand-up comedy. He did some stand-up comedy. He did some television writing. So he also imbibed some of the wisdom that he learned in those careers as well, and like how it applies to gaming. And I just find the podcast very fascinating, so highly educational. So yeah, I'm totally stealing the concept. Let's see if it's as entertaining. My drive will probably be about an hour 15-ish. As some of you may know, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. Well, really, I actually live on the north end. Actually close to Mason, Ohio. Around, like, the amusement park, Kings Island. So, that's kind of where I live. So I'm a little farther north than Cincinnati proper, but it's still a nice little drive, and figured, let's get some content to you guys. So Origins. Origins is actually the first gaming convention I ever went to, and I actually went to Origins not because of gaming the first time. It was back in 1999, and WCW, World Championship Wrestling, had just released a trading card game, WCW Nitro, and they were doing an autograph signing at Origins. And I actually found out about Origins because I was looking for wrestling autograph signings. At the time, they actually brought in Nitro Girl Baby and the Disco Inferno to Origins to sign these. To sign 8x10s and whatnot to promote the game. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to Origins. So I go there. Well, actually, earlier in that day, me and some other people, we went up to the now defunct Northland Mall and actually met Kat, as in Kat, Stacey Carter Kat, the dated Jerry Lawler Kat. She was actually doing an autograph signing for WWE or WWF at the time, at that mall. So we hit that, then we go to Origins and pull into the convention center, just walk in. I'm like, oh, go up to the exhibit hall, walk right in. Get in line to get the autographs of Disco Inferno and Baby, and one of the attendees in front of me turns around and was like, you don't have a badge. What? Badge? Well, it's probably okay. Just act like you belong. Okay, I don't think that'll be hard. But, yeah. So, yeah, my first Origins, I actually walked around in it by just walking through the front door and not actually buying a badge. So I got their autographs, so I'm like, ooh, games. I like games. So I proceeded to wander around the exhibit hall and check out some of the games and everything. Ended up meeting James Marsters, too, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was doing an autograph signing at the time as well. So I'm like, hey, I got his autograph. I'm like, oh, that was fun. I'll have to remember to do this next year. Next year comes, I forgot. The following year comes, I forgot. Well, actually, I do remember, but I kept remembering like the week after Origins, because I really, at the time, wasn't plugged into the gaming world. Didn't really have a local game store. My gaming was horribly sporadic, if any. So yeah, I was kind of a lapsed gamer at the time. But by golly, 2003 rolled around, and that's when I remembered Origins. So I go up for Saturday. And oh my, this is kind of like in the peak D20 bubble. Hasbro had just bought Wizards of the Coast not that earlier. Peter Atkinson had bought Gen Con back in May of 2002, so the little bit of turmoil in the gaming world, the convention world, well, not even turmoil, just, it was a new era, we'll say. So I go in and, oh my gosh, this is amazing! Looking at just all the games and everything, and then Wizards of the Coast was there handing out free stuff like candy. Actually, everyone was. If you weren't going to gaming conventions in the early 2000s, you do not, I repeat, you do not understand what swag is. The swag during those cons was amazing. I had Wizards of the Coast would go there, and they were just doing all, like, demo their games. You get a punch in your card, and then you get to roll a giant D20 and add the modifiers from the cards you got punched, and you got free stuff. And you could do that every day. And the convention's 4 days long. So, yeah, lots of free stuff. I think there was one Gen Con, I figured out the manufacturer's suggested retail price of all the stuff I got. I've got like $400 worth in free stuff. And we're talking like board games, like I got Axis and Allies Europe. Got that one year at Gen Con, or it might have been Origins. I know at Origins I got the Wizards of the Coast 3.5 Star Wars RPG. The core rulebook. I got that as a freebie at Origins. So, you'll have to excuse me here for a second. I am actually pulling cash out of the ATM. Because a good thing to know about cons, it's easier to carry cash. Yeah, most places take cards, but no, cash is your friend. Enter my PIN. I will not say it out loud as I type it in. I love you all, but not that much. Cash. Give me some cash here. But anyway. Excuse me. That was... So, back then, yeah. There was lots of money. New money being invited in the convention scene between Peter Atkinson taking over Gen Con, Hasbro buying Wizards of the Coast. So, yeah. There was lots of free stuff to be had. Okay, now give me my cash, ATM. Thank you. And now we leave the ATM and continue our drive to Origins. But, so, that was my first Origins, and I only went up Saturday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then, outside of the exhibit hall, there's a booth for this thing called Gen Con. And I'm like, oh, that's in August. I could actually, now that I know conventions are fun, I'll go for like 3 days. So I went for 3 days to Gen Con that year. Waited 90 minutes in line to get my badge because, as people are wont to do when they show up at like 10 o'clock or 9:30 on a Friday. Didn't quite fully comprehend as a newbie con goer when you wanted to be there. So, we go there. I go there, and yeah, needless to say, I got hooked, and yeah, I became one of those con people that goes to cons. Well, Origins and Gen Con, that is. So, but anyways, with Origins, it's one of these cons. It's actually been around since like 1975, and it actually started out as a wargaming convention by a Baltimore wargaming group with the help of Avalon Hill. And so Origins 1 was back in scenic Baltimore, Maryland. It was basically a wargaming convention. And then it continued. Then eventually SPI also got in on this. They're like, oh, this Origin thing's cool. So So then Origins was put on by Avalon Hill and SPI. And then in 1978 is when Gamma, the current people that run Origins, finally took it over. And then Origins also was a very nomadic convention for an extended period of time. Because they bounced around everywhere from Maryland. They were in Staten Island one year, Ann Arbor, Chester, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Dallas, LA, Houston, or no, not Houston, Atlanta. It was somewhere south. And it was also weird because, like, the Atlanta one, that was in 1990 in conjunction with Dragon Con. And then there's 2 years, Origins and Gen Con were at the same time, too. Which, yeah, I don't think you'll ever see that again. Any of these three conventions cohabitating like that. But considering 1990 Dragon Con was kind of a new thing back then, so you got that. So, excuse me as I take a drink here. Normally I wouldn't be drinking like this on the podcast, but hey, I'm trying to do this without editing, so you're going to get a little bit of rambling and a little bit of slurping here as I drink my energy drink in the morning. And if anyone's wondering, I'm more of either a monster rehab or a rockstar recovery type of guy. When it comes to I prefer like the not quite as full of sugar and the non-carbonated energy drinks. Those tend to be great for me, more so than the other ones that kind of actually do make me feel jittery if I drink them too fast. So I'm like, not a good idea. So let's go with something a little lighter, because I'm not a coffee person, just don't like coffee. So I need to get my caffeine infused somehow, so that's the way I chose. But yeah, I've been going to Origins. I've been most years since 2003. There was a couple years in like early 2000, the late 2000s, like 2008, 2009. Origins itself was having a downswing, and as Gen Con was picking up, it kind of got a little expensive to do both, because I was actually doing both. Going 4 days to Origins, 4 days to Gen Con. And being located in Cincinnati and only an hour and a half, 2 hours away from each of them makes it kind of easy, but it still adds up. Because it's far enough, it's a pain in the butt to commute every day. But you can do it if you really want, so. So I was there, going to both of them, and Origins hit a point where in the late 2000s, the exhibit hall would actually be kind of empty. There'd be like gaps you'd see the floor plan, there'd be gaps in it. It's just like, oh, there's an empty booth, there's an empty booth, oh, there's a booth of people that didn't even bother to show up. It's kind of sad. And it was around that time, actually, probably a year or two prior, Wizards of the Coast stopped showing up. Because it was like, I would say, Wizards of the Coast having like the booth, selling everything. They only had a booth for, I would say, maybe 4 years? 4 years from like 2002 to 2006 when Hasbro bought them. Before they're like, nah, we're not doing booths. I think part of the problem was the only things they had to sell was stuff other people, their vendors, would be selling in the exhibit hall. So, at that point, they're competing against their customers by selling directly. And so I think, because I remember there was a thing with some Magic the Gathering booster boxes. There was like a minimum price you could sell them at when Wizards was at the con, from what I remember. Basically, they were selling them for retail, and the present booster boxes you were selling, you were not allowed to undercut them. You will not undercut them. And they actually had people going around the con that if they caught wind of it, they'd be like, nope, you can't sell that booster box for that much. Wizards of the Coast says so. And if you wanted to continue getting new Wizards product, that was against their license agreement. So, yeah. they kind of could have kiboshed on that. Then I think eventually they realized, how much product are we actually selling in full retail? Yeah, we're going there, we're demoing a bunch of games and stuff, but really, what's it doing? Expand our money, our revenue. Also, at the time, that was when Avalon Hill, the Wizards of the Coast Avalon Hill, was putting out a lot of games, a lot of different type of games, a lot more than they do now. So they were throwing a lot of things at the wall and seeing what would stick. So I think Origins and Gen Con was also a good way for people to demo those games there and try out all these new offerings. Well, eventually they decided to pull back from that, and Avalon Hill makes games, but they don't make a lot of new games. It's more like Axis and Allies, the 90th variant. Or you might get like, oh, you got Robo Rally with new parts, or let's re-release this game. I mean, yeah, they make a few new games, like Lords of Waterdeep. I actually recently picked that up. Haven't gotten to play it yet. Euro D&D game looks really fun, so I'm like, yeah, I'll get it. Yes, I realize I'm like 5 years behind the times, but yay, I'm also very cheap when it comes to my board games. So, they pulled out at the con circuit altogether. So I think just because they kind of realized, hey, we're getting all this booth space, we're spending all this money, because they would have elaborate sets, lots of volunteers, lots of product, giving away all this stuff. But how much was it actually bringing them back in? When the way they make their money is they sell game books at full price, and then they sell Magic the Gathering booster packs. So they pulled out, and I think that's why they might send some staff there to do some seminars, to do some panels and other events, but they don't really run events anymore. I mean, this year they actually had a bigger con presence. They were at like the different PAXs. They're actually at Origins this year. They're doing a couple seminars. One of them, they're talking about, it's going to be like Mike Earls, Chris Perkins, and some others talking about basically giving like DM advice. So I might try to pop in on that one, because that could be interesting. Hearing like the D&D team talk DMing. They're also going to have a thing talking about the new Adventure League they're doing for 5th edition. So I might pop in on that as well, because I've only done one RPGA game in my entire life, and that was at the very beginning of 4th. It's actually how I decided, hey, I'll try out. So I did that, and it just wasn't for me. It wasn't fun. There was a couple people in the table, and I think a lot of it might have to do with the table you have. And one of them, in the one game I had, a couple of the players had already played the module with other characters, and they were basically just grinding their various characters through all the events to level them up. So they didn't offer a lot. They tried to do a little bit of role-playing, but they were just kind of going through the motions because, hey, they're grinding. Yes, grinding in a role-playing game just doesn't seem fun, but hey, I'm not into the competitive aspect of it, so it was kind of like, huh, what's up with this? So, but yeah, so they were that, and then the others weren't so talkative, and it was just kind of like, yeah, we're doing this adventure. There wasn't room for lots of role play because it was heavily encounter-based, because it was 4th edition. It was kind of built around the tactical combat system, which I still will say, it's a very fun tactical combat system. It's just that the tactical combat has such a huge part of that game, you end up getting wrapped in it and forget about, hey, we can also role-play and storytelling this. So I think that's why 4th gets such a bad rap. There was too much emphasis put on tactical war game. So, but yeah, they're revamping doing the Adventurers League and everything that's going on with that. So I might take a peek for you guys, figure out what's going on with it, and give a little report. That's And I need to check something, y'all. Okay, here's but yeah, as for what else I'll be doing at Origins, I really don't know. I do hope to meet up with DM Nick. He's actually already up in Columbus, and I actually brought my little portable podcasting setup, so hopefully we could get schedules to meet up and do a show. Just do a little more Origins talk with like some of the things we've seen and done at Origins. Origins will always have a special place in my heart because it's a fun little con. I mean, and if Gen Con's getting too big for you, because Gen Con last year was over 60,000 people, Origins was 50. Yeah, Origins had its day once registration issues, much like Gen Con does when it comes to getting events, but it's not as hard. And it's always kind of kept that war-gamey, like, roots from back in the Baltimore days. So while it does have some anime, it does have some of the pop culture, it doesn't have it to the extent of Gen Con. It's still more of a very large tabletop convention as opposed to Gen Con. I would still call it a tabletop convention, but it's a tabletop convention slash turning pop culture, anime, geeky con. It's becoming so much more than just some people playing games in Gary Gygax's backyard. And for some of the, I go into Gen Con a lot and hanging out in the Gen Con forums. I made a lot of friends with people that go to Gen Con, and really the only time of year I would see them would be Gen Con. And what I've noticed in the past few years, as the attendance has basically went up almost exponentially. I mean, when you look at the curve of attendance, it's just almost a straight line. Just like, boom, the growth was insane. And as that happened, my friends that were there the first year it was in Indy and have been there every year since, they're not going. They're like, we're going to skip it this year. It's just not as fun. We're not seeing our friends. I used to, at Gen Con, be able to walk around the exhibit hall and just serendipitously run into people I know, talk with them, maybe hang out with them for a little bit, and then go on and then have the same thing happen with other people. It doesn't happen anymore. The events are spread out amongst the hotels. The exhibit hall is so big, you lose a lot of those extemporaneous, serendipitous meetings. So it lost a lot of the magic for me when my friends stopped going. Because with the advent of the internet and all the sites and Amazon Prime free 2-day shipping, you can get just about anything you would find at a gaming convention at home, possibly cheaper for a fraction of the cost to get in. So, going to shop isn't for me a big reason. It was to see my friends. And for me, gaming-wise, I was never big, hey, let's go randomly game at the con unless I was playing like a tournament for prizes and stuff. Because I got an amazing gaming group. I'm going to humble brag here about my group for a second. We got a group, and we got 6 of us. We're all well-adjusted human beings for the most part. We have like real jobs and everything. So and they're willing to play just about any game. Board game, role-playing game, doesn't matter. We play it. We get along so well. We have so many games we want to play together. Once a year, we rent a cabin at General Butler State Park in Kentucky. Mind you, a very large, air-conditioned, showers and full kitchen with satellite cable cabin. But it's a cabin nonetheless, on a lake, and we play board games all weekend. Because we just love gaming. Not any specific type of game. It's not like, oh, I'm only going to play role-playing games that are these systems or whatever. No, we'll play anything. Right now, we just finished up. We finished up my first edition AD&D game. From that, we did some board games. From that, we went and we played some Only Warhammer Fantasy military stuff. From that, we're going to D&D 5th. We got a campaign for that. We're also doing a top secret SI. And we're going to start making characters for another L5R campaign. Very different systems. But my group was like, let's play this. This will be fun. And so, that's why, and my home group scratches my gaming itch so much, I don't feel the need to game a lot of conventions. That, and also, you'll hear some horror stories of like bad RPG groups and bad DMs and that you run into a convention. So it's like, I have more important things to do with my time than wasted on a bad session. And mind you, I know there's great DMs out there. I know there's great players out there that play these games. It's just, I don't know, it seems a little potluck lottery to me, and it just not really my thing. It's just like for the longest time, I wouldn't even look at seminars or the different talks that would happen at conventions. I would just ignore them. And part of my reasoning was, I'm at a con. I want to be up. I want to be doing things. I don't want to just sit there and talk. And if I want to sit and listen to people talking. That's what my podcasts are for. So I did it. And as I'm looking back, I'm like, you might have missed out on a few things here. So that's why this year I'm going to try to do some of the seminars. That's why they got the couple that the D&D team are doing. So I figured, hey, do those, and I'll do them. I'll be like, well, you're doing this for the podcast. Well, kind of, I'm also doing it for me, too. Just trying to do more things, because normally also my conventions would be spent grinding HeroClick Battle Royals and HeroClick events. But I'm not in the HeroClick scene as much as I used to. It kind of, one venue closed up here, and scheduling didn't work for me making it to events. One of the events a lot of my friends play at, one of the venues one of my friends play at, runs their game on Sundays pretty much at the same time would record RFI. So it's like, not going to be able to make that. And then so I started missing sets, and I'm just like, I'm really a couple years behind in Figs. So hopping back into it now would be a little bit more difficult, getting reacclimated to the meta game and everything. So that's why I'm kind of looking to expand my horizons. Albeit I also used to do all the HeroClick stuff, because their convention, they have a lot of convention exclusive figures, and the price these little plastic figures go for on eBay, like the day of the con, is insane. So you could pay, if you do well enough, you can pay for your convention flipping these silly convention figures. Which one year I actually did pay for Gen Con by going to Origins and doing that. Getting the convention figures, flipping the convention figures, and when you have a little figure, you might have spent, say it took me 4 events to win one of these convention figures. It would have cost me $48. That figure sells for $100 on eBay. Yeah, I got to play 4 games, 4 events. So there was the time enjoyment of that. And each one of those events was a sealed event, so you actually got product to keep. And then if you won one, you got a $100 figure. It was a fairly decent return on investment. Because it only takes like 4 hours to get those 4 events when you do battle royals. So it was almost as though playing HeroClix became a way to pay for conventions for me. But then that became a lot of work, and actually what really turned me off to HeroClix, I think it was Gen Con 2012. A bunch of convention figures. The HeroClix people are lined up outside the exhibit hall, ready to get them. But let me set the scene for a second. Origins would let the Wizkids have people line up in the game hall and let them sell these convention figures in the game hall. The game hall is open much earlier than the exhibit hall, and even though they're not selling this stuff until like 10 o'clock, you could be in line very, very early. So you get a nice organized line forming. Gen Con, however, you will not sell products outside that exhibit hall. Nope. I remember the first year Gen Con had their like merchandise booth set up outside the exhibit hall on like Wednesday. I heard rumblings that some vendors were complaining that they were selling their stuff outside the exhibit hall hours. The convention holder, people were complaining about because some people believe there's a finite bubble of money available at any given convention, and as you spend $1 with one company, you're taking that dollar away from another, I guess. I don't know. But, so, you're not allowed to sell stuff outside the exhibit hall there. But, what this led to at Gen Con is a mass stampede of all these people running to get these highly collectible convention exclusives that you could buy one figure for $25, immediately sell it to a vendor in the hall for $75. And that's what most people did, it seemed like. Or they would slap them on eBay and try to get a few bucks more. So it was a mad stampede. I saw a stroller nearly get run over, and I just saw all sorts of insanity to the point where I was so embarrassed. I'm like, I'm not even going to try to get in line. I'm not going to try to deal with this. I'm just done. Goodbye, HeroClix. I mentally checked out on the game at that time. Just because it so much became these ravenous people. It was like people were getting pushed around, and it was bad. Wizkids didn't have the proper organization, which they're wont to do because they always seem to be short-staffed. Back then, I don't know how it is now. When Wizkids was owned by Topps, they had lots of volunteers to run their games. Lots of volunteers. When Wizkids went to being bought by NECA, the people that seemed to run it were all out of Maryland, like a little group out of Maryland. Like the guys that became like the rules lawyers, the judges for the cons, and it was all that little Maryland clique. And they weren't bringing in people outside of that to the extent that Wizkids would do under Topps. So, and I think that led to a lot of problems because the demand for HeroClix well outpaced their capacity to run events. Because of that. So they ran into, basically, when the game came back, they threw out the Hammer of Thor set. They're like, yeah, we already had this made. Well, because the death of Wizkids. Basically, one day, Topps decided, hey, we're not making any more product. We're closing up shop. It was kind of like, what? HeroClix was successful, but then you saw the other stuff they made a lot of that failed. They paid for a Major League Baseball license and sports clicks. They paid for a NASCAR license and the constructible NASCAR race day. They had a Star Wars license for the Pocket Models game. They had Creepy Freaks, like a garbage pail-ish freaky monster game that was meant for kids. They all kind of died to death. Bad. So it was like outside of like Mech Warrior, outside of Shadowrun, but not because they had the Shadowrun RPG, and they also had BattleTech. But outside of, and then how can I forget Crimson Skies? That failed game, and then there was also the failed Shadowrun giant figure game, which. The game consists of you have giant shadow runners, and I have no idea how it played because I never actually bothered to learn. But that didn't go over well. So they just fail game after fail game, but they had a few really strong licenses, HeroClix. That worked well. BattleTech, Mech Warrior, that went well. So they ended up, Topps ended up, we're closing up shop. we're out of this. So HeroClix died for years. And then there's various people trying to get it back, and then they did. They got NECA bought Wizkids from Top. Well, the rights to HeroClix. The Tops, I think, actually still owns Shadowrun and BattleTech, and they license it to Catalyst Games. Because, years ago I talked to a guy from Catalyst Games, and there was a lot of the people that form Catalyst Games and work on BattleTech and Shadowrun were actually a lot of people that did a lot of fan writing and fan development for the game, and some of those people are what helped get the license for those games from Tops. So that's how Shadowrun and BattleTech never really died. They kept going, whereas HeroClix was just dead for a few years. Albeit the scene in Cincinnati was still pretty good because in Cincinnati, Ohio, Wizkids was located in the old Raul Partha building, another Cincinnati gaming company. Yes, that Raul Partha that made all the miniatures. Wizkids kind of spawned off of that. Jordan Weissman, there's a whole story there. I'll spare you the history of Wizkids. But Wizkids warehouse, while their main offices was in Seattle, their warehouse was in Cincinnati in the old Raul Partha building. So what happened was, Wizkids closes. A couple friends of mine had the brilliant idea, hey, I bet they're going to be throwing a lot of stuff out. Let's go dumpster diving. And oh my, it seemed like everything in that warehouse went straight to the dump. They were pulling out bags of convention figures, of exclusive judge figures, cases and cases of product, factory sets of games. It was a bountiful loot of gaming stuff. There was molds for some of the figures, the actual master molds. I mean, just so much stuff. They grabbed a bunch of it, but they could only grab so much before they just had to throw it out. But before they go, it's like, we can't take any more. And then some other people were doing it as well. So, but they got so much stuff, they ended up giving back to the HeroClix community. They were giving out stuff they dumpster dove from Wizkids as prizes for HeroClix events. So HeroClix kind of stayed alive that entire death period because they had so much crap they got when Topps closed the Wizkids warehouse in Cincinnati. So that's your HeroClix history lesson for the day. But yeah, this Origins I actually am doing what I said is kind of insane. As of right now, I'm commuting back and forth to Cincinnati each day. Just part of the reason the shows have been down a little bit, we've not had any RFIs recently. My wife's had some medical issues recently. I mean, it's all going to be well, don't worry, nothing, but it was just some stuff that had to be worked through, and we're a couple months into it. So it kind of started that from coincided kind of with our sabbatical. So, because, I wasn't available, and then other people had life in, so when you don't have one person kind of pushing, like, hey, let's get a show out, it's easy to start the pot fade. Which I really don't want to happen, but unfortunately sometimes life does kick in, and unless you have a large catalog of evergreen issues, it's bound to happen. So, but yeah, so I'll be doing the commute thing. Not like I said earlier. Once I get there, I'm actually probably going to flip through the event book more and figure out what I want to play, what I want to do. Maybe I'll try out some other board games or something. I don't know. I really just see this Origins for me personally is just things even though I've been going to conventions for going on, this will be like 14th, 15th year. Let's see, 2003 math hard driving up. Plus, I also had about 5 hours sleep. So if I'm rambling some, guy on about 5 hours sleep, driving about an hour, 15 hour and a half, while recording a podcast. So take it for what it's worth. So I might even try some other stuff. Maybe try to get in some board games. For some of the board games I have. Not really sure. But yeah, it'll be fun times. For sure. I mean, I am sad Origins isn't having their auction though. Some years it seemed like that would be where I would spend most of my money at Gen Con or Origins as the auction. Because, hey, I do a first edition AD&D podcast. I like old stuff. So, I would sit there and I would buy, like, the old out-of-print Avalon Hill games. Or, I'm also into, like, the war games with, like, the rule books that read like textbooks. That's kind of my thing. I love those type of games. So, I would also get them very cheap at times, too. Albeit it was terribly annoying. There was a stretch where if you wanted anything under $5, it was nigh impossible because Troll and Toad would have a buyer there buying everything. But Troll and Toad is since, if you look at their website and compare it to like 7 years ago, their out-of-print stuff is kind of out of print. They don't carry the same amount of that type of stuff anymore. They're more of the new games. Magic, singles, HeroClix singles, Pokemon singles, Yu-Gi-Oh! Singles, that type of stuff. They've gotten out of... They used to be, they had everything, and it was great. Except when you're in the auction bidding against them, and I couldn't score a single game under $5. Whereas before, I could buy, like... I was buying copies of some Avalon Hill games, like the more common ones. But as I'm trying to fill my collection, $2 here, $2 here, $2 here. 5 games for $10 to fill in gaps in my collection. Oh yeah! But yeah, so it was at the point where I was bidding against them, and I'm just like, it got annoying. But don't have that to worry about anymore. But yeah, there's no auction at Origins, which is sad. But I know why. Ohio has some laws about how any auction has to be conducted. Any auction in Ohio must be run by an auctioneer, you see. Yeah. So you must have a licensed auctioneer to do it. And so you can't get away with having convention volunteers. Or you can't get away with having Tim Kask and Frank Menser run it. Like they do at Gen Con. You can't get away doing that. So if you need an auctioneer, it's like, no, I got a vibe, which, it's fine and all, but part of the auction fun at like Gen Con is the stories you get to hear Frank and Tim tell. Or when, oh no, I'm blanking on his name. The guy that does Tova. I think his name begins with a J. Tova is the toys, video games, and like other wacky stuff. Basically, it's all the really crazy, absurd stuff that the Gen Con auction gets. They auction off on Saturday nights, and they basically just make fun of the stuff while auctioning it off. And it kind of became a thing called Tova. And basically, you go there, you may not even have any interest in buying anything, you just go there and laugh because it's entertaining. Excuse me. So, but when you have to have the auctioneer auction, you can't do that. So they no longer. So they changed the auction. Originally, it was like auction every day. It was great. Then the auction started to, as the attendance dropped, the amount of stuff going in started to dry up some. And I was like, And then I think they had to start enforcing the law with the auctioneer. And then they hit the point where they'd have a live auction one day and they'd do silent auction the other two. That's a little awkward because with when you're doing a silent auction, the thing of the con, basically, you just get there at the very last moment, walk around, and be like, write down what you want. You're not going to be able to bid early and get a great deal unless absolutely no one else wants it. So it's kind of like, yeah, it was real easy just to snipe people, and it just didn't quite work out, and it was kind of awkward because they would have you write your bidder card number down, and if you're like me, I routinely flip numbers, and I'm pretty sure the year I bid on some stuff, I thought I was the high bid, and I was one of the last people in the hall, but I think I might have wrote the wrong number down because just an example, which considering like my real world job involves me dealing a lot with the court systems, calling them up, getting case numbers, filing information for different various type of court cases, kind of doing a little process work for like attorneys' offices. I'm bad about flipping numbers, so I have to write things down, numbers down, and when I do, say the number's like 7738, I'll write it down as 7783. But then when I go to enter the computer, I'm like, oh, I flipped that. And my brain comprehends, oh, wait, you reversed that. Something tells me I wrote the numbers backwards. I do that all the time. For whatever reason, like I'm slightly number dyslexic. I know dyslexia does run in my family. My grandma, I think, is actually dyslexic. Just from some things about her that we kind of observed over the years, we're pretty sure she's dyslexic. And I flip things. I'm right-handed, but there's a lot of things I do left-handed. Not that I'm actually coordinated with my left hand, but it just feels right. Like I box left-handed. If I were to drop it up stance at the box, I'm left-handed. But my right hand is my dominant hand, for sure. I am absolutely a righty. But when it comes to standing, I feel far more comfortable standing as a left-handed in the southpaw position. Just like there's certain things in wrestling, I'm much more comfortable doing it the left-handed way, the motions and the positioning, than I am the right-handed. There's just certain things it's like I want to mirror things, is the way I put it. So, but anyway, that was a rat hole. But back to the auction. So they did that for the silent auction thing, and I was kind of even looking forward to that, because I like getting old out-of-print stuff. That's kind of my thing. I like the old games. And so, but it's not going to be there, so I'm not sure the amount of out-of-print stuff at bargain basement prices will be found here. We'll see. And it's not like I'm looking to drop a large sum of money here either. It's like I'm not going to be like, ooh, I got to get this game, because when I really think about it, I'm not really sure. There's nothing that's really wanting me to have a hole in my pocket so I can get it. I mean, I got my 5th edition player's handbook for the home game we're going to be started. So it's like, it'd be nice to get the Monster Manual and DM guide. But it's like, yeah, I kind of pick them up whenever, doesn't really need to, so we'll see. We'll see what I end up with. I mean, me and my wife enjoy playing Marvel Legendary, so if I find some good deals on some expansions, maybe. She also likes Smash Up. A lot of my games purchases recently have been more around, like, things me and my wife can play. Because the other thing with my game group is just there's so many people in it. We got a lot of games. So it's like if one person in the group has it, and if the only people I'm going to play with is the people in that group, it's kind of like, why do I need to have a copy? Well, if me and my wife are going to play it, yeah. But other than that, it's like, how about I buy something that no one else has? So we kind of got our own little makeshift board game library going on. Which, actually, I just thought of something here. Vince has been doing another podcast, Pocket Mimic, and they did a mailbag episode, and they were talking about various, and people are coming in with questions and like advice on like how to handle their players and like a lot of the social issues of gaming, like when you get players that are difficult or making other players feel uncomfortable, that type of stuff. And one, I like and drawing from my own experiences, I've never really had that. I guess I've gotten lucky that I game with friends, and as opposed to like random people from the game store. I think I've played one RPG session in a game store just to like demo. I think it was Contagion, the RPG, but that was it. I mean, I don't game with random strangers, so I avoid a lot of the weird social interactions or don't game with people that aren't really close. So I miss out on a lot of that. But I will say there actually, I think, is something to be had for home group party construction. You talk about constructing the party in your game. What about constructing the party as in the players? I mean, in my group, they were like on Pocket Mimic, and one recent episode, they were talking about how to handle scenes and stuff where, like, if something were, like, making players uncomfortable and certain events maybe, like, triggering people to have, like, bad responses, like, either, like, someone told a story about how they had their character was drowning, and you could see that the player was getting physically upset. And then later to come and find out that player actually nearly drowned when they were sick, so it was kind of giving post-traumatic stress flashbacks. Well, I thought, when I was hearing this, I was like, well, it's kind of fortunate for my group. My group actually, one of the players is a psychologist, so should we run into those issues, hey, we got a psychologist at the table to help you work through your emotional issues. Also, what's useful to have, one of my players works for a company that does printing. He has access to a perfect binding machine, which means any PDF we would like printed gets printed and binded in a nice little perfect bound book. So I highly recommend, when putting together your home group party, psychologist, person with a printing press, and then there's the other one you need. You need Kickstarter guy. There's a guy in my group, he buys like every crazy Kickstarter. It's like, we're talking the expensive ones, Gloomhaven, Kingdom Death Monster, and the expansion. He buys it all. If it's a crazy game, he's probably buying it. So we don't have to. Yeah, so I highly recommend Crazy Kickstarter guy as well. I love my people, and they would I'm sure he would admit, yeah, he's the Kickstarter guy. But yeah, so he goes and buys all the really big expensive games so we don't have to. And so it kind of works. And then I'm like and I think my role is, hey, I got all the really old out of print stuff. I'm like, my games are older than me. I'll be 39 in October. Or November. My birthday's in November. You see, another problem I've noticed I started having as I get older is I shift everything a year. Like if you were asking me, when did this happen, like an event happened in wrestling or whatever, I'd be in 96. No, it actually happened in 97. But it's consistent. I'm always a year off. And I haven't quite figured out why I have that year disconnect in my brain when it comes to doing math. But there's like a year that I always want to shift everything. And we are just now passing the Jeffersonville Outlet Mall as I travel up I-71 North. So that puts us at about the 45-minute mark going up to Origins to get to Columbus. So, passing the Jeffersonville exit right now. With the home, but yeah, I absolutely love my home group, and it's funny, I actually met them, all of them, by doing what I say I don't do. A friend of mine, who's actually no longer in the group, because they moved away. Posted, none of us are actually even sure how the group got formed, other than our friend, my friend Julie, had put out like a call, we think on Meetup. We're not sure. No, none of us really remember. For a gaming group. So she starts getting some responses from these guys, and then she asked me like, "Hey, you want to game?" So we all meet up and we start gaming, and we just hit it off. Julie ends up moving maybe 8 months after the group started, and that was back in 2008. 2008, yeah, something like that. So yeah, no, 2008, 2009, somewhere around in there. So we've been gaming together for almost 9 years. But yeah, we just hit it off. We're friends. We all have common interests, even outside of the gaming. Like a couple of the players, they're hikers. They like to go camping. So they'll just go camping or hiking together. I mean, we go various different things. And through the random mean, we actually just became friends. Actually, good friends, more so than just people you game with. And I think that's also why we don't run into the drama and the issues that a lot of gaming groups have. So, because, yeah, we weren't desperate for games, we kind of got to pick and choose who we gamed with, and because of that, I think we got a better gaming experience. And then I'm actually the one who, because none of them had ever been to like Gen Con Origins or any of that. And then I missed like one gaming session, and I came back the following week with like, "Hey, look at all this stuff I got at Gen Con." We're like, "Oh wow, we need to start doing this." And so they started going now to the convention, and so they're most of my group is going to Gen Con. One guy, Rob, he's actually camping during Origins. He's taken his camper, went up to a campground, so he's doing Origins like 2 days, camping the other 2. But yeah, so. But yeah, anyway, I'm sure you all find the psychological makeup of my gaming group absolutely fascinating. Getting a little hiss there from the radio as I drive through, which I don't understand why. But anyways, yeah, as you can't tell, there's no real organization or structure to this. I kind of scribbled a few little note skis down, and just kind of talking to fill time and spew out what comes along to my noggin as I'm doing the drive. Just trying a little something different, get you a little content. Think of these as like the Gen Con special dispatches Jason did, except in long form, as opposed to being spread out over like 20 different episodes. Which, if anyone out there actually does have those, we're actually missing them in the RFI archive, because what happened was our original podcast hosting, to give you a little behind the scenes, was through Libsyn. We had Libsyn, hence why how we had an Android and iPhone app. And to kind of encourage people to, like, hey, throw the show a couple bucks. You can buy our app, get all the benefits of that. Jason, first year at the RFI was at Gen Con back in 2010, started doing special dispatches. Just little random updates that he would post as a app exclusive. Well, though, since they were app exclusive, they never hit the main RSS feed. Fast forward a few years, we moved from Libsyn for our hosting because they're actually kind of expensive. They're a good service, but kind of expensive for what they do. Unless you are really strong into monetizing your podcast. At which point, if you are, then if you can monetize it, Libsyn's great. But otherwise, it's kind of expensive to get the hosting you need if you're doing a podcast of any size or any frequency. So we ended up, me and Vince, we decided when Jason stepped away from the podcast, because the lip sync account was in Jason's name. And anyway. So we were like, okay, what are we going to do for us? Yeah, let's just do what Order 66 does, and they use archive.org. Upload their podcast, just make our own RSS feed, and we'll deal with that hosting of that, and then put the storage and distribution of the podcast through archive.org. Works great. But that meant we had to convert over our podcast and our podcast feed. And which meant downloading all of our podcasts and re-uploading them. Well, it's kind of the pain in the butt getting the special dispatches. And I think they got lost in the migration, in the re-uploading. So I think those got lost to the ether. So unless someone happened to extract them from the app, or I don't know if they even exist anymore. I know I have copies of Jason's actual play podcast. Maybe at some point we'll re-release them. I don't know. But I know those still exist because I did the editing and I keep like the raw master files for everything. Usually I keep a finished copy stored locally as well, or like uploaded. I have like a private Dropbox where I have like raw files of RFI. There's also a missing episode of RFI. We recorded an episode, then stuff happened, and we elected, not due to the content of it, just behind the scenes stuff happened that we're like, let's not really. We elected not to release the podcast. So it's a lost episode. I know I have the raw files for that. I might even have it edited, but I don't remember what issue it was. So there's a lost episode floating around somewhere. But going through, we have like 194 shows, something like that right now. Not counting like all the mini issues and special inserts. Because we're well over 200 if we count those. And somewhere in all that, in my haphazard naming system, we have a lost episode. Maybe if I ever figure out what the lost episode is, maybe I'll release it now. But I don't. Again, it requires me to actually be able to find it. So, but anyway, this podcast actually was also kind of birthed from, we actually had someone on Facebook message us and ask about the Jason special Gen Con dispatches. Their guests were digging through the back catalog, found them reference, and wanted to hear the rest of them, because we only have like a couple up on the website. And we're like, nah, they're gone. And I'm like, people actually want to hear those things? Damn, I'll try that. Hey, I'll steal the Mark Rosewater gimmick and do a drive to Origins. So that's what you're getting here. Yeah, and I know we've been dead. Me and Nick are actually going to talk about podcast show ideas too. So we're hoping to get RFI back up and running. So hopefully we shall be having more content on a regular basis for you soon. It's just a matter of getting back into the swing of things. And like I had mentioned earlier, if all works out, I brought my recording gear, so we should be able to get some content recorded for you at Origins as well, and hopefully me and Nick will be able to sit down and record a show, which will be actually the second time I've actually been in studio, so to speak, with a host from RFI. Going way back. Way back. I think this was probably 2010. I was actually in Jason's apartment in New York while they were recording shows. This was back in my producer's days. So I was sitting there listening in and making my notes to edit the show and all that while while Vince, Nick, and Jason were doing the show. So I was in studio for that one. I mean, because really, like, Nick lives up in northern Ohio. I live in southern Ohio. Jason was in New York when he was on the show. Chad was in Chicago. Sal was on the East Coast. Vince was in Pennsylvania and now Texas. So we've never really all been in the same place at the same time. And then Will was out in Seattle. And actually thinking of it, I've met just about the only host of RFI I've actually not met in person is DM Will. I have actually not met him in person, but I've actually met everyone else, albeit in various through random means and sometimes inadvertently. Like, I met Vince and Jason the first time at the RFI meetup they did at Gen Con 2010. And that's actually how I got roped into doing the show. It was like, they were doing their meetup in the hotel lobby of the hotel I was staying at. And I listened to the show. I'm like, I like the show. So I'm like, hey, I'll go and listen. I'll go and meet the guys. So I met there and started talking to Jason. And I'm like, oh, I do production stuff for wrestling promotion in Cincinnati. So, yay. We did it. And so then that's how I got roped into the show. He was like, hey, do you want to do the edit? Because he didn't want to do the edit. Because editing audio, far easier than video, but to do it well is a pain. It's a little time consuming because you need to re-listen to the stuff at least once. Ideally, you'd be listening to it twice, but I don't. I got my system down. I know what compressors I'm using. I pretty much can tell what the sound will be like when I'm done with it the first time through. So, but yeah, no, it was a pain in the butt editing at first. Well, as I got my rhythm for doing the show. But yeah, so that's how I met Vince and Jason. And then I had actually met Nick before then, though. I ran into Nick at Origins, and I was actually walking around Origins with my RFI shirt. And he stops me. And a guy stops me. He's like, oh, RFI, that's my podcast. I'm like, oh, it's Nick. Hey. So he actually snaps a picture of me wearing the shirt. Mind you, the RFI shirt I had on was the shirt I actually won back in episode 17 when they did a RFI t-shirt giveaway. So yes, they gave away the t-shirt, the one t-shirt they gave away ended up being the guy who ended up producing the show event. Just weird how things work out. So, but yeah, so that's how I met Nick, wearing an RFI shirt, randomly walking down the hall before I was even on the show. I met Chad actually at the same RFI meetup at Gen Con 2010, and then I would see him at Gen Con several times over the years. Same with Jason too. Sal. I actually met Sal the first time outside the Hair Arena in 2000? Or no, Hair Arena, that would have been the ECW TNN taping in 1999. I met him there. And back in the parking lot when he was working for ECW. I actually have a picture of me and Sal from back then. And then, a few months later, February of 2000, there was an ECW TNN, ECW Hardcore TV taping in Cincinnati. I'm front row for it. And Sal's wrestling. Sal gets whipped into the guardrail. The guardrail gets hit. He hits it so hard it gets jammed into my side and bruises my abdominal wall. So Sal actually bruised my abdominal wall back in like 2000. So I always remember like Big Sal bruised my abdominal wall. And then when he emailed in, I'm like, what? This is weird. That I told him the story. Like, yeah, we've met before. Then I told him, meet him in Dayton. How I actually had my hotel room was next to his. His and Balls Mahoney. They were next door to me that night. And the stories of that night I can tell you, just from other people. ECW was insane. I would just leave it at that. They are very insane human. It was insane. But yeah. So that's how I actually met Sal. Well before a glimmer of the RFI even existed. But I know Vince has met Jason and Chad. I don't know if Vince and Nick have ever actually met in person. I'm not sure. And I don't think any of us have ever met Will. And I don't think Vince and Sal met in person either. So, I'm like the one guy who's actually met just about everyone that's actually been a co-host on R5. And actually, I've never met Crispy either. Him being in Vegas, yeah, just nowhere even close. So it's like, if they're on the West Coast in a host, I haven't met them. Yeah. So, but yeah, hoping to, like I mentioned earlier, just reboot RFI, get us back up to things, hit that issue 200, and have an extravaganza, one would hope. But yeah, and just give you a little idea of what all goes into the show. I don't think we ever really did like a behind the scenes of like what goes into producing the show. It's like usually what would happen with an RFI would be Vince would send out just like a rough show outline, like format. Hey, here's our topic. This is what we're going to talk about. Blah blah blah. We go and do our thing, and then sometimes they'll be like, okay, we need a creature. Just pick something out of this book, Matt, or whatever, or pick a magic item, and then we'll hit a few topics. And then at that point, we start doing our research, just redoing some reading material. Show day, we bounce between trying to use Skype and using Discord. Skype used to be great, and then it just seems like more like a bloatware. So we switched to Discord, which seems to work really well for multiple group chats, more so than Skype. So we started using that. Then we would record our show. And when we record our show, we typically don't play, if I'm doing the recording and editing, we don't play any live bumpers, because up until recently, I actually didn't have that capability, because I mixed everything in the PC from my mic, Vince and Nick, coming in through Skype. So I would mix those in the computer. So I couldn't really also, at the same time, play something on the computer and loop it back into itself. It was just a little awkward, because I was trying to avoid using any analog cables at all. Keep it entirely digital, get a great sound, but I couldn't play bumpers. So I would record the show, then I would have to go through, chop up the different segments, and throw in the bumpers. While I'm doing this, I'm also listening for the show for anything I may need to edit out, any wordy dirts that may be said, or just anything else that, that should, or if Nick goes robotic because his Wi-Fi's acting up, that happens a lot. Or I go robotic because I'm, as being the producer, I am technologically cursed at times. Probably would also help if I wouldn't be waking up at noon on Sunday when we record a show at 1 p.m. But kind of happens when I'm working a wrestling show on Saturday night and get home late. I'm like, I have to sleep in, try to recover. So, edit that stuff out. And then I'll also throw just like a leveler and a compressor on it, just to try to, and then a filter to clear out like any background noise, fan noise, just like hums or hisses you get from your mic. Just it's the general stuff that's low, but it's easy to clean out. So I clear all that out, and I do all that in Adobe Audition. Like some people use Audacity, you can do that stuff in Audacity. It's like I got so used to the Adobe workflow, I can't imagine not using it. It's like, it's my baby. I love it. It probably does far more than I need it to, and I can do it with freeware and all that. And if you're just starting out, don't buy Audition. Try Audacity, because you can do a lot of it in Audacity. You just have to learn the interface. Just like use GIMP instead of Photoshop if you're on a budget. But because GIMP does everything, 99% of what a normal person would need. It's only when you get into the real obscure stuff, like the high-level professional stuff, that you really need those higher-end softwares. So, anyways, I would do the editing, I'd do the post-production, then I'd encode it to MP3 format. And there was a back in time I would also have to take that MP3, throw it in iTunes, encode it in AAC, and do all these weird workarounds because we were also doing AAC chaptering. Because there was a back in time, we had two feeds, MP3 and AAC. Because there was a time when the iPod and iPhone actually supported chapters. So if you wanted to start the show but jump straight to Table Manners, or straight to DM Rules, or Sage Advice, or the Treasure Chest, or Creature Feature, you could. You just like, boom, it's bookmarked there, works great. But then Apple decided, man, too much work, we're not supporting this, we're more, bye. So they cut the feature out. It was always a pain in the butt, because I'm a PC guy, I don't own a Mac, and finding software that would actually edit AACs and allow you to throw in chaptering was kind of a pain in the butt on a PC, really. So I was kind of thankful it was gone. It makes my life easier. So then after that, so we have it encoded. I'd also throw in the MP3 tags of the show notes and all that in the MP3 tags. I then would upload the show to archive.org, and then I would make the WordPress post, find some stuff, like find images, like feature image for it, and then set it to publish. And that's kind of like the workflow of the show. And then we would go and repeat. And as you can tell, we kind of bounced around between like every other week, every week. And then again, with the show, we really had to adjust around our schedules. Just because we have lives and we're recording on a Sunday. Because that's what worked best for all of us. But that also means if any of us had anything going on the weekend, shows would get canceled. So it's like a double-edged sword. There was a time RFI actually recorded on the Tuesdays. Back when Jason was on the show, we would do Tuesday nights, and then it moved to Sundays. But then on Tuesday, when we did like shows during the week, well, actually no. We did some during the week shows, and sometimes those were due to interviews, which I'll get into those. But we actually recorded Sunday evening. But what happened was, originally I was gaming on Tuesday nights. That's it. I was gaming on Tuesday nights. But then my gaming moved to Sundays. We recorded RFIs on Sundays, so we started to run into scheduling conflicts. And this was back when I wasn't on the show. I was just editing, so I would start missing some shows. Or I might be a little late to gaming because I think we were recording early enough where if everything worked perfectly, I could get to gaming. So we did that, and then we moved it to earlier Sundays, so that way we would have like our Sunday evenings free. And then we would also occasionally do like shows during the week or whatever for interviews. Because getting guests, and then the reason why we don't really do it, it can be a pain in the butt from a scheduling standpoint. When to schedule a guest for the show, you would have to work around, have the guest be free. At the same time, me, Vince, and Nick are all free. And if that's not during our usual recording time when we have it budgeted Sunday morning, it can get hard. So, hence why we don't really do it. Or if we were to do an interview, it might be a skeleton crew, just because it's hard to schedule guests. And then also you run in, I remember, I think I've told this story on the show before. It's a Tuesday night I'm getting ready to leave for game. My gaming starts at 7. I'm getting ready to leave my house at 6:30. Get a message from Jason, hey, then they were supposed to record a show that night with Larry Elmore, do the interview, and I wasn't going to be able to sit in because of when we're recording. Jason messaged me like, hey, I forgot I have something going on. I can't do the show tonight. Can you call Larry Elmore and tell him we need to reschedule? I'm like, what? Yeah, call Larry Elmore. Here's his office number. Here's his home number. Here's his cell phone number. I'm like, what? So at that point, I'm like, I have to call up Larry. I'm like, I don't know which number to call first. So I call his home number. And I end up speaking to his wife. And they're just really nice people. I mean, they're great. So it was no problem at all. I just called, said who I was. Because they've never spoken to me before. So they have no idea who I am. I'm just like, hey, it's Matt. I'm with the Roll Condition Podcast. We had an interview scheduled. Hey, we need to reschedule. Can we work this out? And we did. And we had him on the show. And we had a great interview. And that was back in, I think that was in the early 30s. I don't actually recall the exact show that it was on. But yeah, we have an interview with Larry Elmore. Going way back prior to me, they had Margaret Weiss on. We had Tracy Hickman on a show, and I think that was in the 50s. So we've had various guests. And then there was one show where we had a couple special guest hosts scheduled, then Vince had to bail, so I ended up hosting the show. So you got to hear me host a show with two people that hadn't been on the show before and I've never talked to before, outside of maybe some posts online, some forum posts. So we had that. I mean, so when you do a show and the more people you have involved with it, the harder it gets to schedule things. So hence why you're more likely to get an interview if you do one like as a special insert on location at a con than you are as an actual podcast guest, just because the logistics work out. Plus you also don't know their mic quality. Do they have Skype? Do they have Discord? It's there's logistics in behind it that may not always be apparent. Like, hey, why don't you get so-and-so on? Oh, and yeah, we had Jeff Grubb on back in the early days. Back in the early days when it was mostly Jason, Nick, and Vince, they had more interviews, and I think a lot, and so. But and then it was also back then, just the whole podcast thing was new, so there wasn't as many like interviews with people, so it was also kind of a novelty. So it was like, oh, you get to hear so-and-so tell their stories from back in the days of TSR, and it was just good times. So maybe that's something we can try to do again. No guarantees though, because like I said, it's difficult, and with everything, just having lives and the fact that I have like 8,000 things that always are going on in my life, projects and whatnot, that my free time between now being married, wrestling, the podcast, and then if I have movie stuff going on at the same time, yeah, it gets hard to schedule everything. And for those curious, I actually do have an IMDb page. You can find me on IMDb at Matt Fowl, F-A-U-L. I've done a few movies locally. A movie that I had just some like extra work in. A friend of mine actually has a deal with Redbox, and past couple movies he shot have actually been available for Redbox. So you can find his movies on Redbox, and last two movies he's done that I've been in have been in Redbox. So for the first one that was on Redbox was 3 Knee Deep, kind of a urban action film. You can find that on Amazon too, so you can buy it off Amazon if you're really curious. The next one will be Straight Outta Hate. Another urban, totalitarian, people resisting against like a corrupt society type thing. Had some extra work in it, and was also location manager as well. So that'll be coming out on Redbox. Not sure when, but it will be. So if you see it and you're curious, check it out when it's there. So, but yeah, so that's also sometimes like I might miss a show or not be able to do because like, hey, I got some movie work. I mean, that's something that I stumbled into on accident. Never really intended to get into movies. It was just, I made some friends that did some acting work, and I'm like, they did a thing, hey, who wants to come and just shoot some stuff for fun? I'm like, yeah, it sounds fun, so I did it, and I'm like, oh, this is fun, and then it just spiraled from there. The one reoccurring theme that for most of what I became involved with, at no point in time did I ever set out, like, hey, I want to be involved in professional wrestling. It was really just happenstance. I happened to start talking to a guy who was the manager of, like, a record store in the mall. And he happened to be a ring announcer for a local promotion. So I started talking to him. And they needed someone to do a website. I'm like, oh, I do a website. So I'm like, I did that. And that's how I got into wrestling. And next thing you know, I've been doing that for almost 20 years. I have a friend I got to see from like him basically starting out in wrestling to now he's in WWE. And I'm absolutely thrilled about that. I got to work shows with people I grew up watching on television. Like, I've worked shows with, like, Jimmy Snuka. I've worked shows with Jimmy Valiant, Jerry Lawler, those guys. I mean, and it's kind of, looking back, just kind of surreal. Just like, oh, wow, all this stuff's happened. And it was like, I remember playing the ECW video game, and that had Big Salad, and then, like, years later, I'm like, I'm doing a podcast with this guy. What? And when I look back at how all this happened, it was just me surrounding myself with interesting human beings. It's not like I had this goal, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to meet people in this so I can do this, so I can do this. It was more like, hang around with interesting people and interesting things will happen. And that's how all of this happened. I happened to just meet people and be like, oh, these people are interesting. Oh, I kind of like them. I'll hang out with them. Oh, and they're doing cool stuff. And I think this can go for life in general. Hang around, and this is some advice here. Hang around the people you would like to be. Or people that interest you, inspire passion in you. And it'll just start, but hang around them in a genuine way, not the fake, as in like you're trying to use them, as in like you're actually interested in what they're doing. You're actually interested in them as a person and care about them as a person. When you hang around those people and spark those type of friendships, and next thing you know, you're getting involved in similar things. You're having doors open that wouldn't otherwise be opened. If it wasn't for me going to that RFI meetup, there's a lot of things in gaming I wouldn't have done when it comes to having the ability to talk with Larry Elmore, playing a board game with Tim Kask at the local FLGS. I mean, just such random things, like the people I wouldn't have met and the experiences I wouldn't have had because I just didn't take that moment. Hey, I kind of like what these guys are doing. Hey, I'll go meet them and just talk to them. And then through that, an actual friendship sparked, and it just grew from there to what my part of the podcast is becoming everything that goes with that. It's just like with wrestling. If I wouldn't have sparked that friendship with that store manager in Tri-County Mall in Cincinnati, Ohio, the manager of the Music Land, who happened to be the ring announcer of a wrestling promotion, I wouldn't have become in wrestling. I wouldn't became involved in professional wrestling. I wouldn't have met one of my best friends in the world, who was actually the best maid, because yes, I had a female best man at my wedding. I wouldn't have met so many people that were so important to me and so important in my life if it wasn't for that one happenstance meeting and sparking a friendship with someone that I found interesting and been having it be a true, genuine friendship. Oh, like if I wouldn't have met Slick Rick, that the ring announcer at Cincinnati, my life would be very different. So very different. Because there'd just be so many people I wouldn't have met. And it's those types of meetings, I think. And it's those types of personal connections that really help you in life, I think. And by being around people that are successful, by being around people that are doing what you want to do and what you want to be, or just spark you, you start learning from them. And not from them teaching you, just by observing them and do what they do. I don't know if I've talked about it, but the wrestling promoter I work for, Roger Ruffin. I work for the Northern Wrestling Federation in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was a referee for the WWF for like 20 years. Started in like 83 when he was 18. And he refereed for them. And he was actually the referee for Bret Hart, Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8. He's refereed WrestleMania. And that one shot, if you watch wrestling, and if you watch like a lot of the highlight packs, you'll show that face-to-face of Bret Hart, Roddy Piper. He's right there in the center of that. He's going to be all over WWE television forever, probably, because that one moment in time. And so, being able around him, and he got to be around all those stars of the 80s, all those stars of the 90s, and you get to learn from him and learn from his experiences. And he's trained some great people. I mean, we've had, just to give you an idea of like people that have either been a part of our promotion or trained at our school. I mean, we've had like Wildcat Chris Harrison, the Monster Abyss from TNA. Carl Anderson, WWE, trained with us. We had Dean Ambrose wrestled for us for a couple years. A guy who once put me in a chokehold in a ring joint. I'm not even sure why he did it. Just, he's a little weird. The character, he's kind of like his character. Those guys come through it. We had Fergal Devitt come in and do a training. Not because we were paying him or giving him money. No, he was just hanging out with his friend Carl that happened to stop in, and he worked it, helped us out. We've had Shinsuke Nakamura, Yoshihiro Tanahashi, AJ Styles, and more cut promos for us on our little internet show. We're just a little internet promotion in Cincinnati. And I got to kind of be a part of all of that just through one happenstance meeting. And that is what I think. And it was just one happenstance meeting. And it's weird how those little moments in time change your life so much. So, just kind of think about that. If you want to get in gaming and you want to make games, start talking to people that are doing that. And just start talking to them, but in a genuine way. Not in a like, I want to pick your brain and use it, and think about what you're also giving to them. Because you'll find a lot of people are really, really giving. And if you show that you're genuine to them, they'll want to give even more. They'll want to help you more. And then you never know when you might be able to help them. Maybe they'll be like, hey, I need someone that can do this. I can do some art or layout or editing or whatever. And next thing you know, you'll be like, I can do that. That's how I got in wrestling. I sparked up a friendship, and the announcer's like, hey, we need someone to do our website. We need a website. And this was back in the early 90s. I'm like, I can do a website. And look, the next thing you know, I'm in wrestling for 20 years. One happenstance meeting, genuine friendship, taking advantage of the situation. And that's how you spark friendships. And how you help change and shape your life into what you want it to be. So, just keep that in mind. And just a little life advice. And then you'll find yourself just doing some amazing stuff. And I'm actually not terribly far from Origins. I'm actually in downtown Columbus, at the corner of 4th and Broad at a stoplight. Got a few more blocks north, hanging a left, and then I'll be at Origins. So yeah, but yeah, I don't know. This is interesting, and if you're out there listening to this, for me doing this podcast, I mean, this was something very different, something very freeform. I kind of had a little bit of notes scribbled down for like maybe talk about this or talk about that, but I really didn't know where I was going. Maybe you can tell, probably you could, but that doesn't matter if you found it entertaining, enjoying, informative, or whatnot. So let me know if you enjoyed this, and maybe if I'm driving to like Gen Con or something, I'll do one then. That'll be like a 2-hour extravaganza. So hopefully I'll have a writing companion or something. Doing freeform for a couple hours seems a little intimidating at the moment, I won't lie. But we'll see. Let's see here, coming up. Yeah. But yeah, let me know if you like this, if you found it, if it's worth your while. Feedback's appreciated. Also, if there's any topics you'd like to hear us talk about on RFI, we would love show suggestions. What you like, what you don't like. Leave us stars. We like stars. We like ratings because that actually does. The way iTunes works, your ratings do affect where you get put on in the search results. So, actually, is it even called iTunes anymore? You can tell I'm so out of it because I think it's like Apple Podcasts now because they're dropping the iTunes gimmick. I don't know. I'm just so disconnected from the tech world at the moment. I used to be a huge tech TV guy. Love tech TV. That would be the only... I had like the most expensive cable package back in the day just so I could watch tech TV. I don't have cable anymore. I used to watch a lot of like This Week in Tech and that type of stuff, but I don't anymore because you see Leo and Twit, it just seemed to be going downhill a lot compared to where it was. And there's a whole bunch of drama. You could say total drama if you want like behind the scenes going on with it. And I just kind of fell out of love with Leo and the Twit network. So I stopped. So I just kind of fell out of the loop with that. So yeah, because that was really where I was getting all my tech news. Now the only tech news I get is from the tech news I get from listening to No Agenda Show, the No Agenda Show with Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. So yeah. But yeah, as I digress again, yeah, just let us know what you would like to hear more of on the show. Because I know we've done reviews on we were doing some reviews on all the hardback books, and we can do, oh, that car's parked. It's not actually there. Why is it parked in a no stopping zone, a little zip car? Really? Okay. Let's see. No one's coming. I right turn. Yep. Okay. I'm very close to the convention center. I can see the Hyatt. Yeah. You have to hear Matt drive because, yeah, driving takes... Okay, let's see. And now we turn right here, ski. Okay, turning right. Okay. But yeah, let us hear what you want to hear on the podcast. Anything you feel like us to cover? Do you like hearing us do the old reviews? Would you like us to dig up more OSR product and review the new releases in the OSR world? So yeah, just kind of let us know what you want to hear out of the show. Because we like hearing your suggestions, and if you'd like to hear it, maybe you can turn us on to something we didn't even know about. So I'm about ready to turn into the parking garage here. But there's a gaggle of gamers walking across the entrance to the parking garage, all wearing black. They actually are. It's like we're living a stereotype here. Okay, what is going on here? Still trying to turn, because every time the road gets open, a gaggle of gamers walk through. Okay, success. Alright, Ski. We are parking prepay Ski for $10. I will gladly take $10 parking. You see? Parking at Gen Con would be like double that. So $10, valid till 6 a.m. the next day. Great. That sounds wonderful, magical. You're gonna get to hear me talk to the ticket taker. So just bear with me a moment, because I'm gonna keep this going until I actually park. Lucky you. Yeah. Hello? Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, so now that is done. Now to find a parking spot. Fortunately, also, usually the parking garage, I always park in the parking garage attached to the hotel and convention center. Yeah, it's more, and if I went around the block, I could park outside for probably about $5. But it's convenient just having your car attached, because I walk back and forth to the car a lot. Like if I need to unload something. Ooh, this is a parking space right next to some dude in a wall. Okay, yeah, there we go. Alrighty. I have now pulled into my parking spot in the garage. So with that, it is time for me to let this go. Wow, I've been recording for an hour and 40 minutes. Wow, this went a lot longer than I thought. Oh yeah, well, I did have to take a little detour to the ATM, so that's kind of why. So with that, anyways, it is time to wrap this podcast up. And so with that, instead of talking Origins, it's time for me to be walking around Origins. And keep it original, keep it old school, and good morning, everyone. Bye.